Hello everyone. This video will take you through how to navigate the risk-based tabs on the Retail Energy Code Party Assurance dashboard. It will present how your organization is performing against the retail risks and the granular risk drivers as defined in the Retail Risk Register. The Retail Risk Register details the key market risks identified by the Performance Assurance Board of the Retail Energy Code. I will cover an overview of the risk-based tabs, what to look at if you find yourself over threshold for a particular risk, and more generally, key points you as a REC party should pay attention to each month. The three tabs of interest for this video are the overall score, the retail risk summary, and the risk driver summary. Of these, the overall score is the most aggregated view, while the risk driver summary is the most detailed. Please also note that I will be demonstrating using a testing site and therefore will not be showing any real information. Let us start on the overall score tab. This tab provides an aggregate view of how each party is performing against their peers across all risks. Here you can see the main visual on the left is a graph displaying a plot of the highest normalized risk score for each party achieved during a month against the percentage of scores in which the party was above the PAB thresholds. The PAB thresholds are level of performance at a risk driver level that guide performance assurance intervention and techniques. The colors on the graph background provide an indication of what good and bad may look like. For example, to land in the red square at the top right would indicate that your scores are generally high, high being worse, and also that you breach PAB thresholds in the majority of risks. The graph by default displays the result of all organizations, and to filter on your organization specifically, select them under the party tile. In this case, I'm going to select my organization, supplier 237. Moving to the right hand side of this tab, you can see two industry level summary figures and also a table sharing some key pieces of information and metrics about your organization. For example, we have annual rating and contributing factors, oversight information about performance assurance techniques, and your maintenance and qualification information. Now let's move on to the Retail Risk Summary tab. Here you can see how you perform by retail risk. A retail risk has been identified as a high-level retail energy market risk. Because these can be broad, they are not necessarily measurable by themselves and may have contributing factors. To provide you with an example, I'll take retail risk 12, which is erroneous switches occur, which result in a negative customer experience of the energy market. Particularly, this can be driven by several activities, for example, the rates of erroneous switches or the completion of various steps required to resolve an erroneous switch within the timelines defined in the Retail Energy Code. This tab has two views related to the thresholds set for particular risk drivers. This is changeable on the top left in Display Dashboard By. The above threshold view displays which retail risks you have breached threshold on for one or more instances in a month. It also shows how you are trending over time in terms of the number of retail risks where you've exceeded the threshold. The number of exceptions view displays information about retail risks for which you have had an individual risk driver that has been identified as having an exception. We will refer to exceptions next when we look at the risk driver summary tab. Of these two views, we would recommend the above threshold is where you pay closer attention. If you breach the PAB threshold for a particular risk driver within a retail risk, in a particular breach for multiple months in a row, it is likely that you'll be subject to some form of performance assurance technique, PAT, or engagement from the code manager. If you are over the threshold, we recommend you drill down further into the data to identify specifically under what risk driver you exceeded the threshold and investigate why that was the case. To drill down, you have two options. You can either click on the particular retail risk in the table. I'll select retail risk 8, and then I would select drill down. Or alternatively, you can select the risk driver summary tab and use the filters on the right hand side. Now that I've filtered down onto the retail risk, I will also filter down onto the specific risk driver for which I'm over threshold. I can see that that is 8.10. Firstly, the detail of the risk driver in question is displayed here at the bottom of the tab. There are specifically a few key pieces of information I'm interested in looking at now that I know I'm over threshold for a particular risk driver. Firstly, I'm interested in knowing whether my scores have been consistent over time or whether it's been a sudden spike that has driven the threshold breach. To do this, I would use the assurance period. So I'll select June, I can see I'm over threshold, July, I'm over threshold, and August, I'm also over threshold. If it was a sudden spike I was seeing, rather than this consistent level of performance, it may indicate that it was a specific or one-off event that drove the threshold breach. If the scores are more consistent over time, it may be a particular systematic issue. Similarly, I would also look at the exception level breakdown. These are the specific instances which have caused this above threshold for this particular risk driver. To do this, I would select this row in the table and select drill down. And that then takes me to the risk driver MPXN level tab. This tab is pre-filtered and displays all the MPXNs that were identified as exceptions in this risk driver. I'd look at the number of miners over time firstly. So first I can see the risk driver normalized score over time is increasing. I can see that the number of miners over time are matching this and no major exceptions are contributing to this. The table at the bottom, which shows you the specific exceptions, has a number of columns. So we can see a description of this particular risk driver. We can see the tolerance of the particular row. In this case, they're all going to be miners. And we can also see the actual MPXN value and the pseudo-anonymized column. I'll start off with the tolerance column. The tolerance tells me how severe an exception it was, and that is a minor in this instance. And it also provides a brief description of what drove it or why it was flagged as an exception. To further talk about pseudo-anonymization, here it says no in this column, which means that the MPXNs in this column are real MPXNs. If this was to say yes, then it means that these MPXNs have been pseudo-anonymized. There's more information for you available further down in the wiki regarding pseudo-anonymization of MPXNs. Overall, the main thing I would like to do on this tab, now that I know I'm over threshold, is actually download this data so I can then provide it to members of my team to investigate further. To do this, I simply go to the top right of this visual, select more options, export data, export, and then I can provide it to other members of my team. Finally, I will return to the risk driver summary tab by selecting back. I will also reset the filters. I can now see every risk driver here, and I can see at the top, because this is filtered by above threshold, all those that I'm above threshold for. In this case, for my two organizations, there are 4 which are above threshold. The key things I as a party would like to pay attention to in cases where I'm not above the threshold, but scoring highly, is similarly whether it's been a sudden spike or a consistent level of performance in terms of both risk driver score and the number of exceptions. And this will direct my investigation.